There are moments in music history when a single song carries more weight than just melody and lyrics. It becomes a farewell, a whisper of goodbye, a haunting echo of what once was and what could have been. For Karen Carpenter, the angelic voice of the Carpenters, that song was called Now. Recorded in April 1982, less than a year before her tragic passing, Now became the final studio vocal Karen Carpenter would ever put on tape. Captured in just one take, it stands as her haunting farewell, a final moment frozen in time. And when you hear it, when you truly listen, you can feel the fragility, the longing, and the heartbreaking weight of a life cut short. This is the story of Karen Carpenter's last song, a story of beauty, pain, and an irreplaceable voice that still lingers in the silence. Now is not one of the Carpenters' biggest hits. It's not as famous as Close to You or We've Only Just Begun, but in a way, it's more important. Written by Roger Nichols and Dean Pitchford, the song is about reflection and longing. The lyrics speak of cherishing the present, holding on to a fleeting moment, and grasping the beauty of now before it slips away. For Karen, recording this song in April of 1982, those words carried an almost prophetic weight. At that time, she was living in New York City, undergoing treatment for anorexia nervosa, the eating disorder that had slowly consumed her body and her spirit. Her health was fragile. Her voice, though still beautiful, carried a ghostly softness. And yet, when she stepped into the studio at New York's A&M offices to record Now, she delivered it in a single, unforgettable take. Just one take. Producer Richard Carpenter, her brother, later recalled that this performance was so moving, so emotionally raw, that there was no need to do it again. When you listen closely, Now feels like a goodbye letter, soft, delicate, but filled with the ache of someone who knew time was slipping away. The song would not be released during her lifetime. Instead, it became part of the Carpenters' posthumous album Voice of the Heart, released in October 1983, 8 months after Karen's death. And because it was her final vocal, Now has come to symbolize her swan song, a last fragile breath. To understand the impact of Now, we have to understand the voice behind it. Karen Carpenter was born on March 2, 1950, in New Haven, Connecticut. As a child, she was a tomboy who loved baseball, drumming, and listening to records in her bedroom. Her brother Richard was the musical prodigy, playing piano from a young age. But Karen, quiet, shy, and unassuming, possessed something extraordinary, a voice like warm velvet. When the Carpenters broke into the music scene in the late 1960s, the world was swept away. Her voice was unlike anything else. It wasn't flashy, it wasn't showy, but it was hauntingly intimate, almost as if Karen was singing just to you. Songs like Superstar, Rainy Days and Mondays, and Yesterday Once More carried an ache that made listeners feel their own loneliness reflected back at them. But behind that voice, Karen was struggling. The pressures of fame, the constant touring, the demand for perfection, all of it weighed on her. And slowly, anorexia began to take hold. At a time when eating disorders were barely understood, Karen's illness went largely unnoticed by the public. Her slim figure was often praised, even admired, by the media. Few realized it was destroying her from within. By the late 1970s, her health was visibly deteriorating. Photos show her frame shrinking alarmingly thin, her face pale and gaunt. And yet, she continued to perform, to record, to put her heart into every note. That's what makes Now so haunting. By the time she recorded it, Karen's health was in steep decline, and yet her voice still shimmered with that same heartbreaking beauty. In the early 1980s, Karen Carpenter tried to reclaim her life. She sought treatment in New York under the care of psychotherapist Stephen Levenkron. She also pursued her own path musically, recording a solo album with producer Phil Ramone in 1979 to 1980. That solo record was a departure from the familiar Carpenters sound. It leaned more toward contemporary pop and disco, with Karen's voice layered over lush, modern arrangements. But Richard and A&M executives rejected it, believing it didn't fit her image. The album was shelved, and Karen was devastated. Still, she never stopped singing. In April 1982, during a break from her treatment, she stepped into the New York studio and recorded 2 songs, Now and You're Enough. These would be the last complete vocals she ever recorded. When Richard heard Now, he was deeply moved. It wasn't just his sister's voice, it was her heart, her fragility, her fight, captured on tape forever. Karen would later return to California, planning to restart her career and begin a new chapter. But her health continued to decline. Despite weighing little more than 100 pounds, she insisted she was on the mend. Friends and family hoped she had turned a corner. But time was running out. On February 4th, 1983, Karen Carpenter collapsed at her parents' home in Downey, California. She was found lying on the floor of a walk-in closet, unconscious. Paramedics rushed her to the hospital, but it was too late. Karen Carpenter was pronounced dead at the age of just 32. The cause, complications of anorexia nervosa, specifically heart failure brought on by years of malnutrition. Her death sent shockwaves around the world. Fans who had grown up with her music were heartbroken. And for many, it was the first time they truly became aware of the dangers of eating disorders. Her passing became a wake-up call, shining a light on a silent disease that had taken one of the world's most beloved voices. And yet, even in death, Karen's music lived on. After Karen's death, Richard Carpenter faced the painful task of going through their archives, unfinished tracks, unreleased demos, fragments of songs left behind. From this, he assembled Voice of the Heart, released in October 1983. The album became both a tribute and a farewell. It featured songs Karen had recorded between 1976 and 1982, with Richard adding final arrangements and instrumentation. Among them was Now, her last vocal recording. Listening to Voice of the Heart is like opening a time capsule of Karen's final years. Songs like Now, You're Enough, and At the End of a Song feel drenched in melancholy as if she were already singing from another world. For fans, hearing Now was both beautiful and devastating. Here was Karen, fragile yet strong, her voice carrying the weight of all she had endured, and yet she was gone. The title itself, Voice of the Heart, was perfect, because that's what Karen always gave us, not just a voice, but her heart. Now may never be played on the radio as often as Close to You. It may not appear on lists of the greatest pop songs of all time. But to those who know its story, it is something far greater. It is Karen's final message. When she sings, "Love me for what I am," now, it's almost as if she's asking the world to see her, to truly love her, not for her perfection, not for the image, but for her humanity. Her voice, though thinner than in earlier years, carries an almost unbearable vulnerability. It is fragile, trembling, but undeniably real, and that's what makes it so powerful. Karen Carpenter's life was marked by extraordinary success, but also unimaginable pain. Her story is one of a woman whose gift was her voice, but whose silent suffering went unheard. And yet, in her final recording, she left behind something timeless. Now is not just a song, it's a farewell. It's a reminder to cherish the present. And it's a haunting echo of a life cut short, but never forgotten. Karen Carpenter may be gone, but her voice, warm, tender, heartbreakingly human, still lingers in every note. And in that final recording, captured in a single take, we hear not just music, but a soul speaking across time, a voice of the heart, forever.